This week, I heard a fascinating story on NPR. Maybe you heard this news about a recent scientific discovery regarding ants. Researchers had previously looked into termite hunting ants in the tropics to understand how they survived the injuries that they sustained in these great ventures. That species of ant has a special antibiotic secretion that they use to treat one another's wounds. Inspired by that information, the researcher Eric Frank wanted to see how another species of ant that didn't have those special glands would care for one another. And yes, you're hearing this correctly. This is a story about ant wound care. What they found is astonishing. Florida carpenter ants often fight with rival colonies to defend their home. They're quite territorial and have massive battles. This recent study found that caring for battle wounds, this species of ant regularly performs life-saving limb amputation on each other. If an ant sustains an injury in his limb, he will present it to a fellow ant for help. The helper gnaws off the injured limb high up at the shoulder and tends to the wound. Ants are the only animal other than humans known to practice amputation as medical treatment. There's more. Not only can they perform amputation successfully, they can diagnose the wounds. Depending on the location, they adapt treatment to maximize survival chances for their injured friend. Because of their anatomy, amputation is only successful if an injury is sustained high up on the leg. An injury lower on the leg cannot be treated successfully by amputation. The ants know this, and they treat the wound accordingly. In the research, almost all of the injured ants that got an amputation from a buddy survived. Meanwhile, ants with a leg injury that were kept away from their nest mates so that they didn't get this treatment frequently died. It's fun to imagine tiny first aid classes or battlefield triage stations. But I'm pretty sure these little critters didn't read or hear a lecture about this sophisticated method of wound care. Somehow they just know in their tiny body how to care for one another with tremendous efficacy. I have often said that our complex human mind is one of the most beautiful wonders of nature, and I stand by that. The knowledge that we accumulate and organize and share with one another is astounding. I also believe that wisdom of our mind is only part of the picture. Wisdom is also in our very animal bodies, in our bones and our tissues. Negating our bodies as a valid source of information and inspiration is kind of a different method of ignorance. Our bodies are beautiful, intricate, unique masterpieces, each and every one of them. In our challenges and dissatisfaction, we sometimes see them as stumbling blocks. And I know this sounds laughable to some of you, but already at 45, I am recognizing some things don't feel as comfortable or as easy as they once did. So I remind myself, I remind us, this old bag of bones is life itself. Imperfect as it may be, my body is the beating, breathing, thinking, feeling, loving presence in the world. It is me, it is life. And it is the only means that I have for interacting with the world. My bodily senses are my window to observe the astounding beauty of creation. And the actions of my body, the words I speak by my mouth or write by my hands, this body is the only real tool I have to care for those that I love. Is it perfect? No. Is it a marvel and a blessing? Absolutely. Many of us have enjoyed watching the Olympics for the past week or so. Part of the magic of the Olympic Games is bringing together excellence in so many different fields, highlighting the great diversity of achievement and what the human body can achieve. I want to share a picture with you briefly. Perfect. This is a photograph by Howard Schatz displaying the bodies of Olympic athletes. These are the best performing bodies in the world. There's a row of women at the top and a row of men at the bottom. They are people of every race and dramatically different statures. The fine print includes the names and statistics of these athletes. I was able to zoom in at home to see Ron Warren Jr., the horse racer, who is 5 foot 4 inches tall and 118 pounds. Next to him, Emmanuel Yarbo, the sumo wrestler, is 6 feet 8 inches tall and 700 pounds. Each of these bodies is the pinnacle of performance. Let this image be the invitation to being our best, strongest self, embracing our unique bodies for what they are. Just a couple of months ago, our Unitarian Universalist tradition adopted a new set of values. They serve to both remind us of who we are and to keep us focused in the direction we want to be going. You're familiar with them by now. Love, justice, equity, transformation, interdependence, generosity, pluralism. They're lovely words. Some of us have more thoroughly embraced them than others, I know. Today, though, I'm reminded that the ideas are meaningless without implementation. Intention is fine, but at the end of the day, the effects of these strategies, of each of the values, must be related to how we implement them with our bodies. How do we live out? How do we enact these values? And how do these actions and words impact the real lives and bodies of other people? We Unitarian Universalists tend to get very stuck in our minds. Reading a book is a great way to experience the world, but having an idea about something and actually experiencing it are different things. Whether it's caring for nature or building justice or acting generously, bringing our bodies in close proximity to those issues and people really matters. John Muir knew, and the Sierra Club knows, that getting people out in the wilderness changes things. Writing about the California mountains, John Muir said, "Few places in this world are more dangerous than the home. Fear not, therefore, to try the mountain passes. They kill care, save you from deadly apathy, set you free, and call forth every faculty into vigorous, enthusiastic action. The magic of your local beach or neighborhood park is only marginally less impactful, I would say." I spoke recently, I think a couple of months ago, about Brian Stevenson, the attorney whose life work has been defending prisoners condemned to the death penalty.
The bar cannot open the page because the address is invalid.
He says, I got proximate to the prisoners. He said, in proximity to the condemned, everything changed for me. I found a calling. Proximity has taught me, he says, some basic and humbling truths, including this vital lesson. Each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. I'm not going to go through his whole story, but the point for today is that his life was transformed into a tremendous force for justice. Not through studying an issue or getting close to an idea. He learned something by bringing his body to prisons, spending hours alongside condemned people and their families. It wasn't just the words from those convicted that matters, it was being there. Closer to home, here at Tapestry, you all have created your own sparks of justice and generosity here and there. And I have a hunch that those of you who help provide dinner for 40 people every month in the homeless shelter in Laguna Beach, through the cooking or the preparing or the carting around of 40 servings of food, I have a hunch that the very physical act of generosity helps you feel connected and reminds you of the truth that there is enough to go around if we share. What a reassuring truth to embody and live in for a few hours. There's enough to go around if we share. I want to spend this last piece of the sermon talking about some very specific ways that we might use our bodies to calm our spirits. Recently, I was traveling. I prefer flying Southwest, even though they do the whole lineup thing before boarding the airplane. The two legs of that trip that I was on were a powerful exercise in contrast. Boarding the first flight, the gate agent was whiny and sarcastic. He reminded passengers over and over again about the limited size of our carry-on luggage and the hurried speed with which we should board the plane. And he did it through snarky and sarcastic comments. Of course, it was an effort to be humorous. I know that. If he were truly awful, he wouldn't have his job. But still, the negativity was palpable. And as I stepped up to the boarding area, until it was time to get on the plane, I walked by, and it seemed as if he was just determined to have a bad day by the look on his face. A couple of hours later, it was time to catch the second flight. There was a quick gate change announcement, and a bunch of us herded over to the other gate. Eventually, we found the right gate, and the gate agent was dramatically different. Mind you, his flight was just as full. Our boarding was just as rushed, especially with the change. He offered the necessary information in kind, straightforward, even encouraging ways. This time, when I was finally stepping up to have my boarding pass scanned, I couldn't help but notice the young man's face was beaming with a smile. The smile was so big, I couldn't help but notice. And it wasn't the polite, get off the plane, bye-bye sort of flight attendant smile. This guy was just glowing ear to ear. A smile is a magical thing. It's not just a social cue to others that things are okay. It physiologically improves our own mood. A smile spurs chemical reactions in the brain, releasing certain hormones, including dopamine and serotonin. It's amazing. A smile can trick your brain into believing you're happy, which spurs those feelings. Now, I know being told to smile is awful. It has sort of sexist connotations and dismissive connotations. I'm not suggesting you smile to look prettier or to sell a car. I'm saying smile because it can make you 1% happier and healthier. So even if you resent it, this week I hope you smile a couple of times and think of me. If you don't give a hoot about how you look to other people, I have another suggestion. Try moving around a bit. That could be big exertion and exercise to work out some of that tension. In times of high stress, it could be something as odd as patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time. Or learning to play a new piece of music or a different crafting skill. That physical action that requires coordination switches our brain from anxiety, panic, flight mode and forces it into rational problem solving. It's a whole different mode of thinking and feeling. We can use our bodies to force into a different mode of feeling. There's also a lot of wisdom to stop and smell the roses. It's easier and quicker than you might think because actual roses have little to do with the power of that statement. You can stop and smell the Play-Doh. Stop and feel the texture of the fabric. Stop and hear the birds singing or the children playing or the air conditioner rattling. Stop and look at the shape of a leaf or the paint color and texture of a wall or the weave of a basket. When we're in that stressful moment, or if we're really bored, simply noticing 5 different things using different senses can act like a clutch for our brain. It can disengage the way we're oriented so we can switch to something else. And of course, taking a big deep breath is always a good choice. That could mean a few deeper breaths than usual, or just noticing how you're breathing, which you can do anywhere, even while driving your car, or even while listening to that person that's really annoying you. If you have time, you might experiment with something called box breathing that I wrote about in our newsletter this month. The breathing method that I find most effective looks really weird, but it's single nostril breathing. You may have heard of this. There's no magic to how you hold your hand or if you use one hand or two, but you use a finger to gently close one of your nostrils and then the other. Breathe in through the left and out through the right, in through the right and out through the left. Or more simply, just go back and forth, alternating the nostrils. It will slow down your breathing and your heart rate. It also has the added benefit of making your mind think about what you're doing and use your hands to do something. Set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes, and I promise you, you will be way calmer when you are finished. We can talk about ideas, intentions, theology, and ethics until we are blue in the face. But what changes our happiness and changes the world around us is what we do with these bodies. And our bodies, in turn, tell us that we are okay, that we are safe, that we are loved, and that we are loving. In this interdependent web of all existence, we are animals, mammals, humans. These bodies are a blessing to each of us. Rather than subduing them to the will of our mind, let us embrace all that they have to offer. Amen.